Welcome to episode 25 of YOUx2, where we're on an adventure getting to know the two of us that are living this human experience, this little human character that we're playing here, and the real us, that powerful, supernatural, eternal spirit being that's made of unconditional love. Hey everybody, it's your brother Zen, and I'm a wake-up artist. My passion is helping us remember who we really are and how we can go through this human experience, and also the connection that we have with the Creator and the spirit world. In the last few episodes, we've been talking about what I have learned through heartbreak. And I've been talking about some of my life drama in a way to show us how we can get back to that little 7-year-old emotional piece of us that has suppressed some emotions and not been able to express those. And in doing so, we're able to help the little child self of us and the adult child of us have some peace. Acts 1 and 2 were on the theme of the heartbreak of being bullied and that victimhood that comes with that. And now we're moving into Act 3, which is around the drama of heartbreak related to feeling not chosen, abandoned, and left behind. In each of these dramatic episodes, I've created an energy field around my emotions just to kind of have this barrier where all of you beautiful, empathic people that watch my videos, so you don't have to feel the flood of all those emotions as I talk about those. I'm also setting this intention as we do this. I'm creating this field of protection, and the intention also that any of the emotions that Creator and Spirit want you to look at right now, that those will be the only ones that will arise through all of that. So I've created this barrier so you are protected and safe. You can just be an observer as we talk about these things. I also mentioned in the previous episodes that the whole purpose of me sharing the, specific things that happened in my life isn't to create guilt or to have blame around what someone did or didn't do. The purpose of all this is for that little child self to be able to express itself, because we have this stages that we develop in. From inception to 7 years old is the emotional development of our emotional self. And then 7 to 14 is the mental piece of ourselves. And then 14 to 21 is the physical development of ourselves. So, we can go about looking at all the things we share from the mental point of view about, we know why people did things and why certain events unfolded the way they did and all the psychology and sociology and everything behind it. But our little child emotional self doesn't get any of that mental stuff. It just doesn't get it because it hadn't developed that side of itself yet. So that emotional piece of itself, all it knows is it feels the feels and it wants to express it. These emotions that haven't been allowed to be integrated into us, these charged emotions that it didn't know what to do with or felt guilty about expressing it because of fear of punishment or things that it was already experiencing, until it gets to integrate those and feel those in a safe environment and unconditionally loving, accepting environment, then it's going to continue to bounce around and impact us. So I love how this is unfolding for us. And we're going to go ahead and jump into this Act 3 right now. So I really like the approach of the presence process by Michael Brown, where he mentions, we're feeling these feelings as an adult, but they're not new. They're actually echoes of something in the past. These are the effect of something that keep showing up, especially those emotions that are upsetting us. Those are actually somewhere happened a long time ago, which is how we get back to the cause of that's happening, and then it would stop the echoes going forward. It's kind of like our bodies, if we have a chronic illness of some kind or a chronic pain, is probably a good example where I just, my shoulder always hurts, and so I'm constantly taking medication to hide the symptoms, but if I never go back to the original cause, what's causing it, I'm just investing a lot of energy in something that's not going to change. So we're going to start and go in and we're going to look at the pain of that heartache of feeling abandoned, left behind, and abandoned. And I'm going to start off like around the age of 14 as a starting point, and then we're going to kind of go forward to see the echoes as they went forward in my life, and then we're going to kind of go all the way back and go to the root cause. An important place to start at this is actually at the age of 17 when my parents were going through a divorce, and we were living in San Antonio, Texas at the time, and my dad moved away to California, leaving my mom and my brother and the little child self of me there in San Antonio, Texas. My mom, of course, was going through, looking at her own wounds and her own heartbreak. And my brother actually joined the military not there shortly thereafter. So he left Texas. And then my mom ended up remarrying after a few years to another individual, but then eventually, to help try to patch things up, she went away to move to be with one of her sisters for a little bit, leaving me all alone in Texas. Now, I know it's probably common for teenagers to feel those feelings in those types of situations of feeling left alone, left behind, and abandoned. So, all the emotional and physical and mental things that were going on at that time were common and normal. And it's kind of probably a lot normal for a lot of people in our day and age because the divorce rate is so high. But about 12 years later, it's like this miracle happened where I had moved back to Colorado Springs, Colorado. My mom also moved back with me, leaving her second husband. My brother got stationed in Colorado Springs with his wife and kids. And then my dad also moved back to Colorado Springs. So we were all back in one location again. And then, as it would happen, the echo continued, right? I didn't get it, in that original place. So here it was coming back into my life again. My brother actually got stationed out of state, so he moved. My mom followed them to be near the grandchildren. And even though my mom and dad had actually dated a little bit during this time, I know they, ended up, ending their little dating relationship there too. As he moved away to a different location. So once again, everyone moved away, leaving little poor child me, here in Colorado Springs, all by its little lonesome. Now, the mental side of me wants to interject and go, well, I know, why everyone made the decisions they did and what they were doing and they were living their lives. And, you have all that stuff that unfolds like that. But that doesn't help my little child self. It wanted to feel those feels until I would get back to look at those things. And it's kind of crazy how, we can look at emotional experiences that we can feel the same type of emotion in different types of situations that take us back. But sometimes like this, where it was like things were so obvious that they were echoes of the same things that were happening over and over and over again. And then fast forward, several years, my brother eventually retired from the military. And instead of moving back to Colorado Springs, which is kind of like our hometown, because that's where we spent the most time when we were younger, he moved back to San Antonio, Texas. And my mom went with him, again, to be near the grandchildren. And my dad actually ended up moving to Hawaii. And then at some point, my brother, it was too hot in Texas, which I understand that for sure. They ended up moving to northern Idaho. And again, my mom followed them to be near the grandchildren. And so they all bypassed not coming back to Colorado Springs, back to, returning back to me. They chose to move to a different location. These repeated type of situations almost make you want to go, Do I stink? I feel like I'm repelling people out of my life because those echoes continue and continue. But you can look at different situations too. Like when I was looking back over different situations where I felt the same way, even though they were different situations. It was like when I was 8, we moved away the first time from Colorado Springs to Nevada. I wrote back to my friends and no one replied. And then later in life, I even had where I was calling my friends, wanting to see if they wanted to do stuff, and they actually told me, you know what? Why don't you stop calling, and when we want to do stuff, I'll reach out to you. And I was like, that kind of thing happens. I also had one of my best friends. He went away to college, and I didn't even know he was back in town. He had been back in town for almost 3 or 4 days, and I bumped into him at a bar where he was there with his girlfriend, and I was like, "Oh, you're back," and he's like, "Yeah, I've been back since blah 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 blah," and I was just like, that, kind of, I mean, it hurts your feelings, right? That hurt my little child self feelings, like, well, you didn't want to tell me you were back in town. And so, that type of thing popped in there too. And when you look back at my middle school days, I mentioned it in one of the bully videos about how, when we were being selected for teams, if you're like one of the last ones picked, and usually kind of one of the last ones picked, that hurts you inside because you're not chosen, you're left behind. Because sometimes they would be even like, all right, well, we got the members we want, why don't you guys figure out what team you guys want to be on? Like, you guys don't matter. It doesn't matter which team you guys are being on. Sometimes they're like, why don't you guys just watch? And it's like, sometimes children can be little shits. And so, you're looking at all that stuff, and you can probably add in even like intimate relationships and that kind of heartbreak that comes in with all of that. But I'm saving that for one of the next videos for that. But just looking at how you can feel heartbroken in so many different ways, even though, like when I was talking about these echoes, sometimes they're like so obvious that you're like the same things repeating. Sometimes we're not aware of them because that when we focus in on how we felt during a situation, those take us back and back and back. When I followed the echoes back to my 7-year-old emotional or younger self, the memory that he brought up for me to remember was actually back when I was like in first grade. So around 6.5 years old. And my brother and I went to the same elementary school, and we would walk home. This was the days of latchkey children, where my dad was, working. He usually worked evenings and, some of the weekends to try to live his dream and to provide for us. And my mom was also trying to help with the income, and she had a job in addition to taking care of the home. So we would walk home together, and then we didn't even have a key. We weren't even latchkey children. We didn't have a key to get in. We'd go in the back garage door, and then have a little nail that you would just and enter in through the kitchen back door. So this particular day, he was supposed to always go in with me, but he was living his own life too. I mean, he must have been 8 or 9 years old. So he, chose this particular day, instead of going in the house with me, he wanted to go down the street and play with, some of his friends. So he said, you know how to do it, go in and do all that. And I thought I did pretty good for like a 6.5-year-old. I went in the back door by myself, found the nail, opened it, and walked in. But when I walked in, I'm like, my dad's not there, my mom's not there, my brother's not there, and it felt all alone. And it kind of freaked out the little mind and the emotions of this little 6-year-old being in this place all by himself. And it's interesting that years later in my 30s, when I went to counseling, they actually did this EDMR where they do the sound on either side. It goes back and forth, and they take you back through memories and take you back kind of like this echo to try to find out what is the core thing that had happened. And it just so happens it took me back to this exact scenario where I saw like this picture in picture where I saw my little 6-year-old self walk in the back door, and then my adult self come through the living room into the kitchen, and we saw each other. So I kind of saw like me seeing my big adult self, my adult self seeing my little child self. And it was so cliche, I know. Look, you found your little child self. But I walked over, I picked myself up, and I told myself that I was going to be okay. And I knew it. That little child was like, yeah, because you're me later. And so I am going to be okay. And because he had these feelings of like, I'm proud of who you are and I think you're awesome. And I thought the same thing of my little self. But then with this process, this presence process by Michael Brown, rather than tell myself something, what I do is you just pick yourself up, pick up my little 6-year-old self, and just hold on to it. And I don't tell it anything. I just allow it to be in this space of unconditional love, unconditional acceptance, and give it my unconditional attention, being the parent that it always wanted and needed at that point in time, but was alone, and it felt alone and it felt abandoned. And so we can do that, and you can do that right now with me if you want, taking some deep breaths and just holding on to that little child and just allowing it to express whatever emotions it needed to express. You know, it felt guilty about feeling any kind of maybe resentment or anger, or it didn't want to cry. It just didn't know what to do because it had never faced that emotion before. So that emotion became charged and it pushed it down and it never dealt with it. And now it can scream, it can cry, it can say, I hate you, and do whatever it needs to do to get that emotional charge released and allow it to integrate the emotions, allow it to integrate the experiences. And we can do that over and over and over again. We can pick up our little child as often as we can until we don't feel charged emotions anymore. And I love that we have this ability and this new tool to do so. It's a life-changing approach. And if you are interested in continuing doing more of that, I have linked to the book, The Presence Process by Michael Brown, down in the description box below if you want to check that out. And I hope this video helped you realize that you're not alone in your pain, and that you have a way to go back and look at those echoes of all this stuff of our little screaming 7-year-old trying to get our attention in our life, that allows us to go back and look at those things to help bring peace both to our little child but also to our adult self. You know, this process has allowed us to experience the drama of life and introduce this way, this tool of getting back to do that. But we're going to, in the next episode, look at heartbreak in a different way, in a more of the mental and the spiritual, while still talking about some of the drama, of course. How could we not? But we're going to be looking into that and moving forward, and we're going to be looking at heartbreak around intimate relationships next. If you are looking for more messages of love in the meantime, in addition to these videos, I also put out weekly energy updates for each zodiac sign, also monthly readings for each zodiac sign, and a few other types of videos throughout the month. So if you don't want to miss out on any of those and be notified immediately when they become available, if you give this video a little thumbs up and click the like button, also click the subscribe button, and that gives you access to the notification bell. And when you go in there, if you select the all option, then you'll be notified of any new videos that come out on this channel. Also, doing those things helps spread the love, because when you like a video, you share a video, you comment on a video, especially subscribing to the channel, doing those things makes the YouTube algorithm so excited. It wants to share the videos of this channel with other people as well. So if you feel inspired to do any of those things, I am very grateful. Also, any of the readings that I put out are general readings, and if you're looking for specific information and answers for your specific life, I also offer personal readings, and all that information is listed in the description box below. All right, all you powerful, amazing souls, as you go throughout this next week, please know that every second of every day of your life that you are unconditionally loved by the Creator of all things, and of course, I love you too. Have an amazing week. We'll be talking soon. In the meantime, you hang in there and you take care.